Hi, this is Ann V. Brady, and I'll be reading an excerpt from my book, A New Beginning, the story of my adoption, life, and service, illustrated by Eric C. Brady. During the service, they called Ed, me, and the godparents, Bob and Betty, up to the baptismal font. Eric had been asleep all this time. When I got up, Ed held Eric as we all went to the baptismal font. Eric started to cry. Eric didn't stop crying until Ed handed Eric over to the minister. After the ceremony, the minister handed Eric back to Ed, and Eric started to wail again. We took Eric to the church's daycare for the rest of the service. It was great getting home and celebrating with family. Later, Ed and I looked at the tape of the christening. We discovered why Eric was crying when Ed held him. The lights from the camera crew were shining right in Eric's eyes. Ed's mom, Anita, sent us some knitted animals. When I went back to work and took Eric to daycare, I put them in his diaper bag. I told the caretakers that I would like them to put the animals in his crib when he was sleeping. When I went back to work, I was told that I was going to work for Captain S. He was doing biofeedback studies. I loved working for him. Captain S showed me how to hook up patients so he could run his biofeedback sessions. He was teaching people who were stressed how to relax using biofeedback. When July 14th came around, we went with Brad and Joyce to watch the fireworks on post. We made it an all-day affair. Eric was in his stroller and we stopped at several stalls. They had games, food, and drink. We eventually found a good place to observe the fireworks. We lay down a blanket and I put Eric down so I could give him his bottle. He would hold the bottle while I was feeding him. If I let go of his bottle, he would let go of his bottle. Later on, I was a little tired and wanted to relax. I asked Joyce if she would feed Eric. She said she would. I watched her give Eric the bottle, and he held the bottle and fed himself. I was surprised to find out that he was manipulating me. When I took Eric back to daycare, I asked them how long he had been holding his own bottle. They said about a month. Below is a studio picture of me, Ed, and Eric, and we're sitting in a chair, and I've got a shirt and a jumper suit on, and Eric is in a jumper with a white shirt, and Eric is sitting next to us and behind Eric with a denim jacket on, and we both have long hair. When my birthday came in August, Ed brought in a huge box. I was wondering what it could be. Ed had been talking about a saddle. I didn't think it could be that because when would I use it? We didn't own a horse, and I wouldn't carry a saddle to the stables to ride a horse that wasn't mine. I started opening the box only to find a smaller box. Each box led to a smaller box until the last box. All I could find was tissue paper. I asked Ed where my present was. He said, "You haven't found it yet?" I told him no. Ed started to help me find it. We finally found the box. It was a small box. When I opened it, there was a wedding ring. It was two rings that fit together to make a heart. It was the ring he had shown me when we were shopping at Costco's. I hugged and kissed Ed. I loved the ring. Ed had promised when we got married that someday he would buy me a real wedding ring. When Ed and I went rallying, we would put Eric in the back seat in his car seat. We took Eric with us everywhere we went. When Ed and I drove road rallies, Ed was the driver and I was the navigator. It went pretty good, except when Ed decided that he could be driver and navigator. A case in point, in one rally, I was reading the directions and Ed drove where I told him to. Except when we came to a red light, I told him to turn right when the light turned green. Ed turned left instead. He then followed my directions exactly. We ended up at the airport. We barely made the last checkpoint, which was at the pizza parlor, where the awards were to be given out. Captain S brought a birthday cookie for my birthday into work. He knew that I had been upset about the secretary forgetting my birthday every year and promising not to forget again. Captain S was a pleasure to work for. I helped him with setting up his sessions with patients. I saved the data we got from the readings on patients. He was measuring whether biofeedback could help patients relax. The patients he saw had headaches, backaches, TMG, and some were amputees with phantom pain. Eventually, he bought a thermography machine. We were then able to take pictures of the problem areas and see what areas were in pain, red, and where they were relaxed. Captain S taught us how to do all of it. I wrote a simple program to tabulate our program on a TRS 80 or Trash 80. I had learned to write simple programs at home on our Commodore 64. We received a Commodore 64 magazine that showed how to write programs for games and educational programs for kids. Several times, Ed and I would visit Don and Nita on vacation. Once they took us to Opryland in Nashville. We would stroll through Opryland pushing Eric in his stroller. They had several music pavilions representing different types of music. We would listen to rock and roll, barbershop quartets, and jazz bands. It was wonderful. They had rides and a sky train. I didn't like a sky train because I hate heights and thought about what would happen if the cable broke. Nita was a self-taught court reporter. She taught Don how to be a court reporter. Nita was great at her job. We bought a sippy cup for Eric to wean him off the bottle. It was a weighted cup to make the cup spill-proof. The first time I gave it to Eric, he just turned it upside down and poured the milk out. When Eric was almost one, he rode with us in a road rally. After the rally, Ed and I ordered a pizza. Eric looked at the pizza and started to lean towards it for a bite. We gave him a slice, and he has loved pizza ever since. When Captain S came down with chicken pox, he asked me to run his biofeedback sessions for him. He was afraid because of the scars on his face and scalp that he would scare the patients. He trained me in how to run the sessions, which I did until he was better. I learned a lot from Captain S. Sometime in spring of 1984, we had our first CTT, Common Task Test, given. We were all given dates and times to report for testing. We were tested by NCOs on navigation, map reading, and camouflage, foxholes, and identifying friendly and threat enemy aircraft and tanks. We had we had to name them from pictures on playing cards. We had to say whether it was an Abrams tank, Bradley tank, APC, etc., and if they were enemy or friendly. If we had trouble, they instructed us on the names of all the vehicles, friendly and foe. They also told us how to identify them. During that time, I was informed that my MOS slot had been deleted from the Department of Clinical Investigations. I was told I was being transferred to El Paso, Texas. I had to get a top secret security clearance before going to El Paso, Texas. I applied for the clearance and got it. One weekend, I noticed when I passed by Eric's room that he was walking in the crib. He was holding on to the top of the crib as he walked around it. When he took his first step, he walked perfectly. He didn't waver or fall. He just got up and started to walk. After that was the fun and of keeping up with him, especially when he started to climb. We had joined the Savannah River Rafters Club. We got a babysitter for Eric, and one weekend we all went to the Savannah River to go down the rapids in rubber rafts. We brought coolers and 2 rafts. We did this because the original Savannah River Rafter race. We did this before the original Savannah River Raft race because they weren't going to allow beer at the race. We had sodas, beer, and food in the coolers. Once one of Ed's coworkers brought along his 3-year-old son on our trip down the Savannah River. We didn't think it was safe to bring a child along. I received my orders and planned for the moving company to get our household goods. I made several copies of my orders. Each section you have to sign out of when departing. A post demands about 6 to 7 copies, and any post that you're assigned to demands about 6 to 7 separate copies of orders to sign into a post. Ed and I had a plan. We would take separate cars. I would take Eric with me in the Mazda 66, and Ed would take M with him in his Fiat. I took leave and we drove to Ed's parents' house in Ashland, Tennessee for the weekend. Grandma and Grandpa love seeing Eric and M. Below is a picture of Eric sitting and holding on to a leash, and there's the beagle M sitting there waiting to be taken out. After the weekend, we left for Texas. We drove through Atlanta and stopped shortly, leaving the Dallas-Fort Worth area. Stopped shortly after leaving the Dallas-Fort Worth area. The weather was pretty good, and the problem I had was when Eric wasn't sleeping, he was crying and screaming at the top of his lungs. When we stopped for lunch, I discovered Ed was having problems too. M kept trying to climb over the stick shift into his lap while he was driving. When we stopped for the night, Ed got a room in the back of the hotel, and we brought M into the room. It took us 2 days to cross Texas and arrive in El Paso, Texas. And that is the end of Chapter 7. I hope everybody has a great Monday and a great week.